The Change Officer Podcast's Future of Financial Services series is brought to you by Holy Wallet, the world's first wallet-as-a-service platform. Stay tuned to find out how Holy Wallet can help you build your mobile wallet to increase revenue and reduce time to market.
And in order to still be relevant, you can't swim against the stream anymore. You can either fight these established successful fintechs and payment facilitators, or you can realize, I as a bank, what am I in the business in? I care most about the funds under management and that funds flow through me. I can try to compete with them technologically, but I will never catch up. Or I can be part of that fund flow and provide them what we do best. Access to money, access to financial licenses, and access to financial products that you can build your solutions on top of.
Welcome to the Change Officer Podcast's Future of Financial Services series. In this series, we are deep diving into some of the hottest and most pivotal topics in the financial services industry right now, including personalization in financial services, embedded finance, and the mobile payment revolution. Join us as we seek the answers to critical questions such as what does the future hold for the financial services sector and where should we look for the next big disruptive idea. You've built Alpha FinTech and then you were figuring out how to sell it. But if you could go back in time to build another B2B business, what attributes of that B2B business would you look for so it's irresistible?
What's the first thing you need is great IT developers and technologists. If I'm a great IT developer and technologist, am I going to go to a bank or am I going to go to Google, Facebook, or start my own business? So therefore, the best talent, maybe you'll get one or two, but you need an army of great devs. The best talent is not going to come to you. So if the best talent is not going to come to you, how are you going to develop the latest and greatest platform? Then the second thing is, if I've even hired the best, latest and greatest techies, I still have the problem of compliance and risk and oversight. I will select automatically more established technology versus young technology that might be better and faster. I will automatically have to follow majority of processes that will slow me down. So even if you've built the best race car in the world, you have a speed limit how to drive it with. So then how are you going to build the latest and greatest platform?
Makes sense. This is a perfect moment to welcome you to the Change Officer, Future of Financial Services series. Oliver Rajic, founder and CEO of Alpha FinTech.
Great to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
So I would like to start from, well, this is a late start because we are going to use everything that you already said in the episode, but I would like to set up the stage for the conversation by understanding and unpacking the problem you decided to solve, and that was 6-7 years ago. That is a perfect stage for what I want to discuss about the innovation even today. So what was the problem that you saw and the gap that you decided to address with Alpha FinTech back in 2000, and when was that?
2010, actually.
2010.
That's when I started to see that there was a problem.
Wow.
And what I sort of started to see that the whole concept of managed services was the future. And if you look at it even back then, people wanted to build their own websites. Every merchant went to, I want to build my own website. Majority of people don't do that today. They do that via Shopify, Magento, where you have a foundational platform to build your product and top off. Then you saw that also with the cloud technologies when they first came out. Most people misunderstood what the cloud was for. It was just for hosting. It wasn't just for hosting. It was to free up your resources and to provide you tools to build products on top of. So ultimately, the future was not building your own power plant and running it, but just plugging into it and building custom solutions on top of. One of the terms for that today is the whole concept of embedded finance. Is you connecting two solution providers to build your products on top of. So when I sort of looked at that back then, is in the 2010s, there was finally the discussion of the API that made it easier to connect to merchants, and to the cloud that made it easier for startups to come to life. But the entire innovation was on the B2C space. Adyen became a name, Stripe became a name, Checkout became a name. And everybody wanted to take on the big guys, the big banks. So there was a gap. The gap was, okay, if I'm the big guy in the big bank, people didn't come to me for technology. They came to me for trust. And slowly these fintechs were gaining that trust and hence eroding their market share. So how can these other big fintechs, merchant service providers, acquirers, and FIs catch up? The traditional way is I send out 100 RFPs, get a bunch of solutions, and drown my IT team in doing technological and operational integrations. That takes years and millions of dollars. So the idea was, why don't we build something like an industrial strength app store that allows the merchant service provider, the gateway, the bank, to plug into a single API. And now they don't have to select one fraud solution provider, they have 10, 20. They don't have to select one loyalty solution provider, they have 10, 20. And when they have that selection, they no longer have, you can have every color you want as long as it's black, but for each merchant category, you can customize and optimize the way you want to. So by having more products, it provides them more solutions to upsell, more customization possibilities, a faster way to access new and relevant solutions, which they didn't have today, a centralized source of data that now is standardized that you can monetize, and start tackling all these adjuncts and stripes with bespoke solutions you don't have today. Mm-hmm. So a way to access product through a managed service provider that frees up your resources, allows you to sell more product without the hard and heavy upfront cost involved in that.
All right, so this was sort of, you just packed and summarized the concept of company that you've been building for 12 years into a minute. And there's a lot of things to unpack here. But basically, what I understand is back in 2010, you decided to build, as you said, industrial, how did you define
Industrial strength app store.
Industrial strength app store that is going to allow for established large fintechs, financial services banks to focus on building new products instead of building a platform.
Correct.
That takes a lot more of their time and probably lead them to a miserable failure. So this was the idea, but then it took you a while to actually scale Alpha FinTech into a business that later on signed on New Zealand Bank and other bigger players. Why was that the case?
The first challenge we had was we took on an incredibly complicated problem. And the problem is, whilst the API made it easier to connect to a provider than previously, ultimately when you've got 100 products, you will have thousands of APIs. And to connect to thousands of APIs is one thing. To maintain them is a whole other thing. So all of a sudden, you thought your cost of integrating to API is X, but it turned out to be X plus Y to do all the integrations and maintenance of. We didn't expect that. The second challenge that come, and this is where usually techies are a best and a worst friend for these large organizations. Every techie will tell you, oh, we can do an integration easily. That's great. Now that you've integrated that, you've got 15 different billing formats, reporting formats. And how do you standardize that? Financial reconciliation, data centralization, and billing engines on top of. That's not what tech does. That's a separate job. So first, you've got the technological layer. Then you have the operational layer. And when you've got that solved, you still have to make sure that the security, scalability, and stability is bulletproof. Because once you've got 10, 15, 20 large organizations sitting on that platform, you got to make sure that when somebody just hits you with 1,000, 2,000 transactions per second, you can scale that very quickly. So the challenge was, it wasn't that we were solving one complicated problem, but numerous. And the biggest problem for any tech solution is when you don't have one big problem. One big problem is a blessing. You know what's wrong. Even if it takes 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 months, you can fix that. It's the death of 1,000 paper cuts that kills you. Small issue here, small issue there. And everything takes a resource, and everything takes a resource. And next thing you know, you're 3 months away from being 3 months away from being 3 months away. So to get the product humming was incredibly important. And why that was more important for us than maybe for other solutions if you've got 15, 20 small merchants, something goes wrong, it's not great, but nobody hears that. If you've got one large financial institution that's running thousands of merchants and something goes wrong, everybody hears about it. So it took us a good 4 or 5 years to get the solution right, that we didn't have to throw more people on it, that it was automated and standardized, that the failovers were right. And that's where optimizing the technology that was available, not just the APIs, the Kubernetes, the Dockers, all the fancy little words, to make them work together, not just 11, 12 solutions that you've pieced together, was incredibly complicated. But once you had it right, then you can shift focus on, let's hit the market aggressively.
So you reached 2021 and you were successfully acquired by PPRO.
Payment Professionals, correct.
All right. Which is a validation of being on the right track to truly contribute to the innovation of this sector. Let's talk about the future. And for a second, we'll come back to the process of innovating, because that's important on the way to reaching the future. But where do you see the future of financial services in the new era of financial services leading us?
Payment processing itself was a very non-sexy term. And as a matter of fact, many banks exited it. They left. Deutsche Bank left. HSBC had formed JVs. And they didn't understand it. The profit was dropping down. But all of a sudden, you look at companies like Adyen, Stripe, and Square, they're just blowing up.
Massively successful.
Massively successful. Then everybody's talking about FinTech right now and payments. The question is why? Because Adyen does not provide payment processing or Stripe. They provide merchant services. Now, what does that mean? That means is, traditionally, if I'm a merchant and I went to a bank, I got my merchant account, here it is, your cost for Visa, MasterCard is 2%. That doesn't do anything for my business. All that does is it allows me to accept credit cards. How are you helping me grow my business?
Plus you take a cut.
And that's it.
Sometimes decent one.
So how that's shifted right now, instead of it being cost, how do I generate value for that merchant? How can I help them grow? So the way the transformation happened is, I would argue that Square, Adyen, Stripe, and Shopify are now digital banks as well. People have a different definition and mindset of digital banks. Hey, digital bank is I accept money, but they're providing loans. So how are they able to shift from just accepting payments to providing loans? Because when you accept a merchant processing, you've done KYC and AML, you see how their revenue is growing, you see where they're growing, and you control their daily bread and butter. So if they process $100,000 with us, I can comfortably give them a $10,000 to $20,000 loan. And maybe I'll take 5% of the daily processing to repay the principal of the loan. If they're selling to country XYZ, I will introduce some FX product around that. If they've got employees globally, I will introduce an employment card to that. And I have to do no additional paperwork, no additional contract, because everything was set up from one go. Those employees now, I can also start paying real time. Maybe I can also use crypto for faster payment chains. And what have I done for that merchant? I am now giving that merchant tools to grow their business. Hey, let me process your credit cards and I'll help you give you the funds to grow your business. I will provide you intelligence, how you can sell globally. I will pay you and your merchants faster to improve your cash flow, and all of that from that single piece of data. So the future of fintech and finance isn't just about establishing these rails anymore. We've had that through the 2010s. The rails are here. Crypto is establishing other rails for different new value add layers. But it's building better products on top of those rails that helps more people launch businesses, people who have business, to grow it through that singularity and that tool, and others to get paid faster and quicker, to have more money in hand, again, to provide more value beyond that.
The question is, what are the bank roles in that future?
So what the banks used to do is they were basically quasi-monopolies in there. even for Visa and MasterCard, the only way you could have a processing license is if you were a principal member. And that slowly started changing, where Visa and MasterCard realized, you know what, our future growth is not just through the banks, because we want the small and medium-sized merchants. And small and medium-sized merchants don't like banks. The paperwork is drowning. It takes too long. So what started also happening is you started seeing payment facilitators, marketplaces that were sort of coming into play and providing a platform and possibility for these small merchants to go live quickly. So Visa and MasterCard and governments started realizing that, and they started providing these successful companies with quasi-financial licenses. They said, hey, you can also become a Visa and MasterCard principal member in some countries. In Europe that works, in the US that works, in Australia that works. Latin America, Africa, and Asia are still lagging behind. So where the banks have still come in, though, they have these rails. And they have rails for card issuing, card acquiring, ATMs, money remittance. And in order to still be relevant, you can't swim against the stream anymore. You can either fight these established successful fintechs and payment facilitators, or you can realize, I as a bank, what am I in the business in? I care most about the funds under management and that funds flow through me. I can try to compete with them technologically, but I will never catch up. Or I can be part of that fund flow and provide them what we do best. Access to money, access to financial licenses, and access to financial products that you can build your solutions on top of. So the future, in my opinion, is that banks, and this is the whole concept and discussion of embedded finance, will need to provide access and platform solutions where these bigger innovators can come, don't need to get access to these licenses, which they could, but takes a lot of money and takes a lot of time, and instead collaborate with the banks where you do what you do best, we do what we do best. We'll handle the technological and the merchant interfacing layer. You help us on the infrastructure and the finances and what else is needed behind there. You get your funds under management. I get the merchant services fees on top.
Sounds simple.
Sounds simple. But there is such a thing as an ego and a personality. And what will happen is the bank will say, so now you are marginalizing me to a utility. So now I'm sitting in the background. And in theory, you can replace me easily, because that's what a utility is. In theory, if you're the front and you touch the merchant, how do I know that tomorrow if somebody doesn't give you a 10% better deal, I'm gone? And that's true. But that's progress to you. One of the biggest innovations and topics at Money 2020 this year was orchestration. There's two types of orchestration solutions in technology. One is called payment orchestration, the other one is called service orchestration. Payment orchestration in merchant services is the most disruptive solution on the horizon. They're more so than crypto. Doesn't matter what everybody in blockchain talks about. Payment and service orchestration will transform the entire way how a merchant selects a provider and how a provider selects a product solution.
Let's unpack that a little bit more.
So, what technology has enabled through payment orchestration is that I can leave my bank and my payment service provider at the click of a button. So, back in the day, if I worked with one bank and I connect to their API, now I want to leave to another bank and I have to connect to their API. But that API connection still requires resources, time, budget to get into integration queues. Do I really want to do that? Do I really want to 3, 6, 9 months for a couple cents? Why would I do that? So what's happened right now is that payment orchestration technology is becoming more and more mainstream. What that means, without coding, by a no-code engine, I can switch from provider A to provider B to provider C, just like that. It's a click of a button. I can leave you. The big fintechs, Uber and Netflix and even Amazon, they've been doing that for years. But they've got hundreds of developers who can integrate to that. This technology is now becoming mainstream, where even the small mom and pop can leave that. Now, what that means is I, as a bank, no longer an acquirer, can control the merchant via the fear of having to reintegrate somewhere else. They can leave me. They can leave me. And if I don't provide the necessary value by the click of a button, I'm out. So it becomes a race to the bottom cost-wise. And if cost no longer can provide any value, I have to add value on top of. So the whole fear of, I want to control the merchant, forget the concept of control. Payment orchestration is killing control. You are a utility. You can be replaced by the quick click of a button. So what new value will you drive? You can catch more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. Back then the vinegar was, haha, you're stuck with me. Good luck integrating somebody else. That's gone. So how are you going to incentivize that? Service orchestration is the whole orchestration principle taken with product providers. So instead of just switching banks, now you can switch fraud solutions, loyalty solutions, payment gateways, value add products. It's a whole layer of complexity also via the click of a button. Now, here's what that does. The traditional way of finding a product was, let me send out 5 RFPs. I'll send out 5 RFPs. I'm going to occupy procurement, legal. After months, I will have selected a provider. After the contract is signed, I go live. Now I'm stuck with that provider. I don't want to go through that process again. They're good enough. Even if they're not great, even if I'm wrong, if they're good enough, I'll take it. Now new innovation comes. We just signed a contract. I know you're better. I know you're cheaper, but don't really want to go through that song and dance again. With service orchestration, here's what that does. I am the service orchestration layer for a bank or for a payment gateway. And any product provider that has to sit on my platform has to sit there if they provide SaaS contracts, software as a service. I, as a bank, through the orchestration engine, I can switch them off and shut them off at the click of a button. I don't have to run RFPs. There's a SaaS contract, there's a master contractual provider. I will try 1, 2, 3, 4.
Trial period, 30 days.
That's it. And even if I'm a new innovation, what is the biggest problem every new innovation has? When they go to an FI, that FI is paranoid. FI meaning financial institution. The FI is paranoid. What if I go bankrupt and bust? What do I do then? What if that provider goes bankrupt and I'm stuck? With service orchestration, who cares? You have plan B, plan C, plan D. So you can now try new innovations. You can challenge the legacy guard that ruled on fear. I don't have to occupy legal, tech, and anybody else. So the rate of innovation is going to grow because the fear factor is gone. The rate of change is going to accelerate because adding and replacing solution providers is via a click of a button. So going back to your original question, friction is being completely eliminated. You cannot rule anymore that somebody is stuck with you. And the entire industry is changing on the payment side and on the product side, how you select providers and leave them and how you select products and test them. And it's like with the cloud when it came. You can delay the inevitable, but it's inevitable. So you can either be ahead of the curve and monetize it, or behind the curve and figure out, oh crap, now what?
Hey everyone, sorry for jumping in. We'll be back with the rest of the conversation shortly, but I wanted to take a moment to thank the sponsor of our show, Holy Wally. Within the next 2 years, 4 billion people will be using digital wallets, and the global mobile payments market size is expected to hit US $5.5 billion by 2024. It's more important than ever for financial service providers to offer a digital wallet service to their customers. Enter Holy Wally, the world's first wallet-as-a-service platform that allows any financial service provider to build their own digital wallet as efficiently and cost-effectively as possible. Whether you're a fintech, retailer, banking institution, or insurance carrier, Holy Wally has all the elements you need to build your own company's ideal digital wallet in a matter of minutes and manage it on an ongoing basis. To find out how Holy Wally can increase your customer engagement and revenue, or to register for a demo, visit holywally.com. The link can be found in the show notes of this episode, and now enjoy the rest of this conversation. This was amazing. A really, really good summary and set up the stage for some further questions. One, this is all right. We've been in 2010. You being a representative of a small group of people who are on the innovation side trying to disrupt the industry. We visited the future, which is a couple of years down the road. We're not talking about decades anymore. The future is 2025, 6, 7. We are here today when things are very disruptive. There is a lot of noise at the moment, especially in the fintech space. Now the question is, how do you execute on this future? You've worked and witnessed some good examples. If you agree, New Zealand Bank is one of the examples that is taking the lead on the innovation side as a large incumbent player in the banking sector. What are they doing good?
So what Bank of New Zealand did great, I have to do this once also give credit to Ross Jackson. He was one of the evangelists and pioneers who saw that, was that they looked at solutions as a group. Let me explain what I mean by that. So the way the majority of the banks and FIs have things sort of stuck is isolated in silos. There's a payments group, there's an FX group, there's a loyalty group. And hence they look at it as each finger versus one fist. And the way Bank of New Zealand and Russ Jackson and his team looked at it, that said, hey, merchant acquiring in itself is probably the least revenue generating and profitable product within our group.
Is that generally across the globe?
Most of the time. Card issuing is usually the most attractive. FX can generate the most margins. So merchant acquiring was always a little bit of an afterthought, stuck somewhere in the corner. But what he saw is that $1 in merchant acquiring would generate $5 across all the other groups. And that was sort of a revelation where they said, okay, why don't we do it different? Why don't, the whole printer cartridge discussion, why don't we use merchant acquiring as a platform to upsell and cross-sell other products? And then, if I'm the head of merchant acquiring, if the whole business group generates $5 and merchant acquiring is $1, then still for that business group, it counts as $5. So it counts what we generate as a group versus you as a singular entity. And that way, your mindset will focus as us, as a group. How can I use my product to upsell and cross-sell all these other solutions better and easier? And that was, for me as an entrepreneur, an incredibly frustrating journey. That what we had is a platform that, hey, you can onboard a customer faster because your KYC and AML, you can automate it, optimizing across dozens of solutions. Then you can also optimize payments because you've got more products to cross-sell and upsell. You can help merchants increase their authorization rates because you've got 15 and 20 fraud solutions, and all that data is now standardized, so why don't you monetize it into BI? That sounds logical, right? That's 5, 6 different groups within the bank. So you're not selling one product. You have to now sell to each of these individual groups. But the problem with that then is, imagine having to sell the iPhone 14 not based upon all the features and function it has, but hey, here's the phone call quality of my iPhone 40. Let's not talk about the camera. Let's not talk about the apps. Let's just talk about the phone. Now you're starting to compete with other dumb phones who can't do 90% of what, or 10% of what you can because you're just looking at the phone call element. And that was sort of the competition we had. They were like, oh, okay, I understand. You can do all of that, but I just care about my KYC AML bit. Yeah, but how are you feeding it to the other groups that it helps them optimize customer? Well, that's their problem. That's not mine. I am just focused on my one single solution element. To use a simple analogy is, they were 5 fingers. They were not one fist. And BNZ realized that, no, we've got 5 strong fingers that makes an even stronger fist if we have them work together. So having that vision there from that team really helped us to sell this singular, multifaceted, multi-touch solution that ultimately every FI is going to have to go to. So if you look at a Stripe and Adyen, which sort of are the golden standards within our industry, it's not because they have a payment gateway or a payment platform or a alternative payment solution. It's they can onboard a customer in minutes because of tech, because of KYC, because of AML. They can cross-sell other products because of data intelligence and singularity and orchestration capability. And they can add new products because of how they're deploying and optimizing partners externally and resources internally. So it's all things working together. It's not just one solution element. And any bank and FI that wants to enter this space, unless you have that singularity across different product lines, I'm going to say this very bluntly, you're wasting your time. You will not compete against them. You will waste 3 years and money, because it's why, if you are a merchant, would you go to that bank that is slower, that has less products to upsell and cross-sell, and that has fewer data intelligence? And it blows my mind how common sense is not so common.
In one of the videos that I came across, and you mentioned, if you're a new bank or existing bank that wants to compete out there, with Adyens and Stripes of this world, onboarding needs to last, minutes. But we're literally talking minutes. We are living in a reality where this takes weeks, sometimes even months. In this region, it can take months. Now, to enable this minutes-long onboarding process, there are multiple solutions that you need to make work together, which is one solution, multiple APIs, which means that you need first to integrate thousands of APIs, then maintain thousands of APIs. This is going to take a lot of money and a lot of time. And this is just one segment, which is onboarding. And after onboarding, all of the other services, you're just unlocking the opportunity and potential to play the game. So what's the playbook for the banks who want to compete?
I saw this great visual. I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is like the Facebook for professionals and grown-ups. So usually I spend every evening browsing LinkedIn just to see what the industry is going, but also it's educational. And in there was one image that I saw, the bank of the future. And that bank of the future had probably 40, 50, 60 different aggregators and solution providers working together. So none of it was about developing platforms internally. It was about harmonizing and orchestrating across dozens of external products and solution providers. It could be Marqeta for issuing. It could be PPRO for alternative payment methods, acquiring platform as a service. It could be, I can't even think of all, Temenos for core banking, even though they've got some other issues right now to solve. But what it was more is about how can I be a traffic cop across all of these solutions optimally and monetize the data that I've got through all of that. And that's a completely different mindset. So again, common sense not being so common, your chief architect can be your best friend or your worst enemy. The chief architects that are your worst enemy is, we must control the entire process. We must build. We cannot be dependent on any external party. And even if it takes 5 years, which is mind-blowing that a technologist would say that for 5 years, we're going to be out of the market just building. If you look at the rate of change over the last 5 years, it's been mind-blowing. And it's hard to even comprehend what the next 5 years is going to be. Look, I understand FTX is shaking the industry, but the blockchain itself is transforming how quickly money can move, how people can get paid, how you can provide security, and even large organizations like SWIFT can be shaken. So maybe it's not at the maturity point yet, but it will be. So what will that impact be? And are you really going to put your head down the sand for 5 years and build a solution that was relevant 5 years ago, but not today? So I feel very strongly that any large FI building their own solution for 3 to 5 years, just for the element of control, everything comes at a cost. That control that took you 3 to 5 years now opened the door for somebody else to take your customer to build something, to do something else. So speed and elimination of friction is key. What will give me the products fastest and what makes me least dependent on one single provider? And to build the bank of the future, those are just the two simple questions. You're not building a platform, you're building a product that either small merchants, large merchants, individual users are using. Once you know who your users are, once you know what the value proposition is, then fuse together these solution providers to design your product. Stop wasting time and resources and money and budget on building platforms. You will not build it better than somebody whose entire life and focus is just building that. Their survival depends on that. You are battling somebody whose survival and entire being is that.
Well, Oliver, last question to wrap up. If you think about this horizon at 2026, 2027, and I consider this to be a far future, this is giving us another at least 2 cycles of innovation. What is the change that you see happening over these years that will unlock gaps and opportunities for new, massive, disruptive product solutions, technologies, etc.? We were talking about whether you're too early or too late. You recognized the opportunity 2010. You said you were too early, definitely way too early. If you were to think about 5 years from now, where do you think is that next big thing?
So what crypto has shown, or the discussion of Web 3.0 or the discussion of embedded finance, is that the simplicity and speed of access to capital is key. Simplicity is, I can get paid with any currency, whether it's Ethereum, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, whether it's via Visa, MasterCard, credit card. I want to get paid in my currency of choice, and I don't want to wait 1 or 2, 3 days. The moment, think of it this way. If I'm, let's say, an Uber driver, and the moment my customer steps out and closes the door, I've got money in the bank.
That would be nice.
So that speed of funds is going to be sort of the future and key, because the faster you have your money, the more you can also monetize and do something with that. The second thing that's going to reign supreme is, how can I, as a small business, grow my business, not just locally and globally, quickly? So marketplaces are going to become even more predominant, as they are already in Latin America and Southeast Asia and Africa, or in the US, Amazon, that are completely going to transform what it means not just to build a business, but to bank in there. Shopify itself, I forgot the number, was generating well over billions of dollars in loans. Who would think of Shopify as doing that? So when you combine the speed of funds with the simplicity of access and the simplicity of growth, commerce and fintech and payments will continue on the horizon of growth, because it's providing economic freedom to people that didn't have it before. If I'm somebody in Southeast Asia, for me to have launched a business was difficult, to get the funds for that business was difficult, and to get paid is difficult. So I'm continuously chasing money. Please give me a loan. Please give me a merchant account. Please put money in my bank. What is the future if that's no longer the case? If I'm somebody in Southeast Asia or Latin America and say, you know what, I'm starting a business tomorrow, and I'm going to launch it on this marketplace. And oh, look, money is in my bank. I'm now going to use that to grow my supply and to pay more people. Oh, these people, I'm going to pay them. You know what? Let me issue a card for them. And that will create a whole new generation of wealth and flow. So this infrastructure of speed and simplicity is the future, and that's where crypto should be playing a role, because they eliminate a lot of that friction. So whatever business you are starting, make sure that the speed of access to funds and simplicity of building your business and running and optimizing your business is revolving around that.
Oliver, thank you for taking the time out of your vacation to stop by our studio.
Thank you for having me. It was a great discussion.
This was amazing. You managed to answer my basic question with an amazing clarity and simplicity. And I believe our audience resonated with everything that you said. Thank you for taking the time, and hopefully we'll talk about your new venture in 2027 or 8.
A little faster this time, ideally.
Hopefully. Thanks.
Thank you.